We've got the bio of Kirk Dillard. It's 17 pages long. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. I think it's vitally important that all of us remember hello. I don't know what that. I got to tell you, I know you're going to see some visual evidence of this on the screen. At least Kirk told me that you will. Paths that lives take. You never know. You never know. So many years ago, he gets photographed next to somebody who signed a piece of legislation. You'll get the whole story. But there's another one of those Y's in the road. You know, we came to the fork and we took it kind of situation that I observed as a friend of both participants. And that was when there was a terrific senator in the Illinois Senate whose name was Tom McCracken. And there was a terrific chief of staff somewhere on the second floor of the Capitol. And his name was Kirk Dillard. And it was, and a friend of theirs and mine, Gail Franzen, had decided to make a change in his life. And before you knew it, these guys, it was elegant. And on the Republican side, as a designated Republican introducer, I can say, we're not always known for our elegance. But in a matter of minutes, Tom McCracken graduated from the state Senate to the RTA chairmanship. And Kirk Dillard graduated from chief of staff for the governor to being a member of the state Senate of the state of Illinois, the greatest state in the Union. And I remember working with them both at that time and how much they knew about what each other was up to. Kirk, because of his involvement at the governor's office, and Tom, because he had represented that state Senate district. And I thought it was a terrific example of public servants working together. And I think if you look back over all of the forks in the road that brought Kirk Dillard to this place, I think you'll agree with me that there isn't a person in Illinois government who is not better known for working with everyone. And that's why we're glad that he took time out to come over here to the City Club and tell us what's going on at RTA and how he's working with the entire region, the entire state, and indeed the entire country. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Kirk Dillard.
Thank you. Yeah, my life is a spaghetti bowl interchange, let me tell you. Thank you all for being here. And I want to start out by thanking some people. First and foremost, I want to introduce the chief engineer and the conductor of my household, my wife, Stephanie, down here. Stephanie. And then I've had the fortune throughout my life to work with some great people. And I want to introduce Leanne and say thank you to Leanne Redden and the staff of the RTA, which make me look good on a daily basis. Leanne and everybody, thank you so much for everything you do. And then I am pleasantly surprised when I got to the RTA. I have a wonderful, wonderful board of directors. Some of them are here today. Don DeWitt from Kane County, J.D. Ross from Will County. Larry, great appointment, former president of Joliet Junior College. Suburban Cook County Commissioners, I see John Friga back here. Bill Colson, Michael Lewis, who I believe is Tony Preckwinkle's appointee to my board. And with a lot of pride, Sarah Pang from our board at the RTA is the transition chief for Mayor Emanuel's next term in office. So I am blessed with a great board of directors, and I'm a very lucky guy, speaking of intertwined lives. The mayor's new chief of staff, Forrest Claypool, as they say on the south side when I need Sox tickets, we in mass transit got a guy in City Hall that understands the importance of mass transit. And then my old friend, former mayor of Lamont, Rick Kwasniewski, who chairs the PACE board, great PACE directors, Mayor Claire, Mayor Stevens, all of the mayors that are on there. And in my life, I go to bed at night sleeping a lot better knowing that Don Orsino, a real railroad man, is at the helm of Metra, and it's never operated, I think, better. Don, you do a great job. And then TJ Ross runs PACE, sort of, with all due apologies, the sleeper, the quiet service board of mine. TJ ran the bus system in Phoenix. In fact, my college roommate and his wife from Phoenix are here today. But TJ Ross, you do a magnificent job running PACE. Phenomenal, phenomenal job. He's not here today, but my longtime friend, John Gates, my predecessor at the RTA, came to me about this time a year ago and said, hey, I think you are the perfect person for a lot of reasons to become the chairman of the RTA board. You're a suburbanite that's lived in the city, you've ridden the system, you ride the system every day, and your law firm is a downtown employer that relies on the CTA, Metra, and PACE to get its employees together. And won't you please, please, please take this RTA job so that I can go off and do something else? There are days that I thank John, and there are days that I curse him, but John Gates left an amazing, and he's a very active member of the City Club, an amazing operation for me to take over, and much of the success goes to John Gates. So let's get on that spaghetti bowl journey of Kirk Dillard. As I told you, I'm a lifelong transit rider. I started taking the CTA as a small child seriously. This is me at Kittyland, out by you, Mayor Stevens, and Dan Cronin will know Kittyland on First Avenue in Melrose Park. So, I was enamored with trains a long time ago. But I rode the CTA as a child on the north side to the pediatrician, to the grocery store with my grandparents. I rode the CTA and Metra when I was a law student at DePaul University. I don't want to give away my age, but I actually have a fond photo of my grandfather and I riding the very last streetcar that operated in Chicago in the early 1960s, I think, Alderman Gabinski. During law school, the L and Metra was my lifeblood. It's an essential part of Kirk Dillard's story, but it's an essential part of everyone's story from here. So I'm a big believer and user of mass transit, whether it's from Kittyland to college. I guess it was my destiny to be the chairman of the RTA. And this photo here, with me in my charming disco clothes from the mid-1970s at Western Illinois University, and a bunch of my fraternity brothers are here. Yes, that is really me there on the left. Governor Dan Walker, who signed the RTA Act, God bless him, passed away last week, although I told Professor Green I'm more of a Mike Howlett guy, and Governor Ogilvie was was at my law firm for a long time. Governor Walker came to Macomb when he was governor, looked for a place to say, okay, where could I have a beer with a bunch of college kids? So I said, well, you can do it here at our fraternity house. He said, I'll buy a keg. I said, no, you'll buy 2 kegs. So I was driving a real good bargain for my Delta Sigma Phi fraternity brothers back here. But he did sign the RTA Act, and the rest is history. I'm not sure that, other than health care, there are many services in Illinois that affect more people than mass transit does. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but if you don't take mass transit, you still benefit from it. So I want to tell you a little bit about the RTA today. The RTA is the only unit of government in transit that is charged with the oversight, the funding, and the transit planning for the CTA, Metra, and PACE. We are the Solomons, the regional balancers, so that one area doesn't get all the money, and we are the backstop to make sure that this region is politically balanced. It is an economic irreplaceability to have mass transit. Our lives and our neighborhoods are intertwined with mass transit. Our region covers the 6-county metropolitan Chicago area, 70% of the state's population. 9 million people live in the RTA region in 277 communities. We are the second largest transit operation by miles or passenger miles in the United States. Only New York City is bigger than we are. And we do boast one of the great transit entities and systems in America. It's safe, it's efficient, it's connected, and on most days it's reliable, and it's getting more reliable, and we're going to keep it that way. Numerous corporations cite this region's great mass transportation system as a reason they come here. Riding the CTA, Metra, and PACE in and out of our cities gives people the most valuable gift you can have. And I have young kids, the most valuable gift is time. The sheer size and density of our region makes our vast transportation networks priceless. We have $150 billion of assets amongst the RTA service boards and other cities that are experiencing rapid growth. I was just in Dallas last week. Tom Langton was down there, are investing massive amounts of money in mass transit, and we're lucky. We have a system put forth by our grandparents and parents that is world class. But our infrastructure is old. In fact, it's probably the oldest that there is anywhere in the United States. The L is 100 years old, and our system is old, but that's not a bad thing. We're in neighborhoods already. We run through the fabric of neighborhoods and suburban towns, and that's a good thing. But it is really time to find an aggressive new way to fund this asset of $150 billion that we have that is falling behind. Here's a couple of facts I want to leave you with today. Since 1993, the United States gas tax has been 18.4 cents a gallon. Without inflation, today, that'd be about 31 cents per gallon. So it's lost about 40% of its buying power since the federal government enacted it. And our state's gas tax, we don't operate at the speed of light there either. The Illinois gas tax has been 19 cents on a gallon since 1990. And if the motor fuel tax in Illinois had kept up with inflation, it would now be 32 cents a gallon. So it is time, in my estimation, for Illinois to consider an expansion of the sales tax base, or go to a service tax, or most importantly, increase its gas tax indexed to inflation, or find some other mechanism to fund public transportation and infrastructure in this state. An RTA survey recently, with a lot of pride, showed that 90% of our riders said they would be likely to recommend our services to a neighbor or to a friend. That's good. We want to push towards 100%, but 90% is pretty good. And today, a statistic that I didn't quite realize, 38% of everybody in the metropolitan area takes mass transit weekly. 62% of all the people that are working down here in the Loop and the surrounding areas, 62% came to work today by mass transit. The numbers are overwhelming. More than 2 million riders a day. You can't put any more cars on the Eisenhower, Dan Ryan, Kennedy, Edens, or Stevenson expressways, nor should we. And studies show that even if you don't take our system, you still save over $400 a year in gasoline because all of these 2 million riders aren't on the Kennedy and Stevenson and Eisenhower expressways. And if you really want to go into statistics, you could save almost $9,000 a year if you're a two-car family and one of you starts taking mass transportation. Now, I'm a student of demographics, millennials. They change the entire equation. They think about mass transit and life much differently than my generation did, and many of you. But they're going to be about half our workforce in the metropolitan Chicago area in the next couple of years. Data shows that these millennials are less car dependent. In fact, only 63% of these people between 16 and 24 even have a driver's license, unheard of to my generation. It's the lowest rate since 1963. You know, that's not good news for Allstate or State Farm. And research shows that Chicago has the fewest number of millennials that own cars of any place in the United States. So they take mass transit at record numbers. They expect it, they text, they like that freedom that it gives. I will also say that Motorola, if you want an example of the kind of jobs we want, Motorola's headquarters in the Merchandise Mart, 90% of Motorola's employees in the Merchandise Mart take mass transit to work. So we better understand that if we want to keep our kids here, the millennials here, and compete against Boston and Seattle and Dallas and the Bay Area, mass transit's vital to keeping these types of folks living in the Chicago area. And we're a sandwich generation in Illinois. The other big freight train that's coming with respect to mass transit is senior citizens and people with disabilities. We're getting older. The RTA manages what's called the ADA Paratransit Certification Program. Last year, 17,000 new people came over and said, hey, we want to get in that program. Our RTA staff of just 100 people counseled over 3,000 senior citizens on how to get around on mass transit last year. And the ADA Paratransit Program, as Pace will tell you, serves over 5 million people every year, and it's the lifeblood for senior citizens. Economic development. We got a governor that loves to talk about getting results. Well, you know, transit has and is a great economic development tool. The Brown Line. You know, transit costs money, but it is worth it. When Mayor Emanuel stood at this program in January here at the City Club, he connected public transit to modernizing the city's infrastructure, and he said the following, and he listed transit as one of the major reasons this is all true. And a lot of people love to put down the state of Illinois, but I like to sing its praises, and I like to sing the praises of my hometown, Chicago. And I'll echo what Mayor Emanuel said right at this podium. Number one, Chicago is the #1 city in the United States for families to move back into the city of Chicago. We're #1 for corporate location. We're #1 for direct foreign investment. And we have the best library and park district system, Skinny Sheehan's here all the time, in the United States of America. And then the mayor, I saw Elizabeth Lively back here from the hospitals, the mayor said that 1/3 of all the teaching hospitals in the United States of America are located in Illinois. And you know what? They all rely on transit. I was just on the Pink Line the other day, Rush Presbyterian, St. Luke's, the U of I hospital. It's vital to get their employees and patients and visitors to their hospital. And I sat with Rob Christie during Dan Cronin's speech last Thursday from Northwestern University. Streeterville is so crowded that without mass transit, Northwestern University's hospitals would have real problems. The Brown Line. When they redid the Brown Line recently, medium home values and property values within 1 mile of the Brown Line, Alderman Moore, they went up over 40% in a number of years. The ridership was up over 50% in terms of the number of people that get on there every day. And economic development from redoing our elevated system is just phenomenal. The before and after pictures at Southport Avenue and places that we have done things, Wilson Avenue, Joe, the before and after pictures when the L is worked on are unbelievable. L ridership is up at its highest level in over 50 years. L ridership has increased 61% since 1992. And the mayor and Forrest Claypool and the CTA have done a magnificent job on a shoestring budget of keeping that system good. You got to keep up with demand, folks. I saw a Red Line rider quoted in the Tribune just a couple of weeks ago who said when he leaves work at 5:15 on the Lake platform on his line, he has to stand 2 and 3 deep and sometimes wait for 2 or 3 trains. You got to keep up with demand. And I understand it's not all about downtown. Jackie Grimshaw from the Center for Neighborhood Technology has long supported the Ashland Bus Rapid Transit Corridor. Ashland Avenue goes from 95th Street to Irving Park on the north. What you need to know about Ashland Avenue is that there are more than 250,000 people, 250,000 people that live within a half a mile of Ashland Avenue, and 1/3 of those residents don't own cars. Over 100 schools, restaurants, businesses, etc. It's the busiest bus route we have, and Professor Green will tell you it's the 3rd longest city behind, or 3rd largest city street behind Western Avenue, and Halsted is #2. But there's 250,000 people that Ashland bus corridor could help. We've long been criticized for having the probably worst transportation from our 2 major metro stops, the Ogilvie and Union Station, of any city in America. We have more walkers to our metro train stations than any other city in America, but that's going to change as you've seen the construction going on with the loop link that's coming today. So we're listening, we're trying to do more with less every day. Public transportation for the 30% of Illinoisans that don't use the RTA system is still vital. I was just down in Rochelle, Illinois with Don Orsino, where the 1,000th rail car what used to be a farm just a couple of years ago rolled off of a factory line in Rochelle. And the mayor there said, we understand that mass transit in Chicago creates economic development, it puts money in our schools, but most importantly, there's 700 people working in downstate Illinois so that we can all ride our trains up here in Chicago. We're all one state, folks, and mass transit produces incredible amounts of money for all of the state's treasury. Now, the RTA and freight railroads, we're the transportation hub of the United States. We work together pretty well. The Englewood Flyover project is an amazing engineering feat. It helps us move people faster, but most importantly, it helps move freight faster too. And with Don Orsino and his folks at Metra, we are cooperating with the freight railroads more than ever before. He's not here today, but I just saw Mayor Nowak from Romeoville said, if you got a Metra station in your community, it's, quote, a game changer. So if you live in the suburbs and you don't take mass transit, all of your real estate values, just like those folks around the Brown Line, are positively impacted by it as well. Union Station, one of my pet projects over my 5-year term, and we're working with Steve Koch from the mayor's office closely. I want to point out that mass transit isn't just about trains and buses. It's about preserving your history, the iconic buildings that we serve, but also jump-starting certain regions. Union Station was built when Calvin Coolidge was president 90 years ago. It is the third busiest railroad station in America. It serves 120,000 people a day. It is busier than Midway Airport every day. The place is a mess. It's fallen down. I was there twice during the winter time when the pipes broke, and they always seem to break at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock on a Friday night and flood the place out. But we need to work on Union Station's redevelopment. We held a press conference about a couple weeks ago at Union Station. It's part of our Stand Up for Mass Transit, and I happened to be joined by a bipartisan group of Senator Dick Durbin, Representative Dan Lipinski, Mr. Transportation, Congressman Quigley. It was bipartisan. Bob Dole was there from the North Shore, and Congressman Foster. And Senator Durbin said, quote, it's time for the federal Congress to man up. Man up was his term with respect to funding its nation's infrastructure as it ought to be funded. Mayor Emanuel said that if he's able to help secure a federal railroad improvement fund loan similar to the one that bankrolled the overhaul at Denver's Union Station, and if you've seen any ads for Denver recently on Chicago TV, you know that Union Station's the centerpiece of their ad. Mayor Emanuel thinks that the redevelopment of Union Station could be worth more than $7 billion of economic development and just make that West Loop take off faster than it's going today. If you want to be number one in transportation, whether it's O'Hare, Midway, our freight system, our transportation system, our tollway system, Union Station's an integral part of keeping that reputation. We're not investing enough to maintain. We have a $4 billion regional transportation budget. And of that, $3 billion is operations, a little more than $1 billion is capital. But studies show that for every $1 billion we invest in mass transit, $4 billion in economic activity goes. It's a 4-to-1 national return generally on these types of projects. The federal funds to our region are expected to only cover half of the pent-up cost that we have just to keep the system like it is, and Springfield's another story. I will tell you that more than 20 states in this country right now have initiatives going on to raise public infrastructure funding, and Iowa, of all places, just raised their gas tax a couple of weeks ago, and as Tony Preckwinkle reminds me all the time, Los Angeles passed a referendum for mass transit funding. New York spends 4 times more per capita on mass transit than we do, London 9 times. So again, we got to step up in Illinois. Last but not least, a lot of people ask me, what do Governor Rauner's proposed budget cuts do to our regional transportation system? He proposes essentially to take $170 million out of mass transit funding from the state. This is a 45% decrease in the CTA's state funding, 45%. a 60% decrease in Metra's state funding, and a 41% decrease in PACE's state funding. But very importantly, he takes away all of the ADA paratransit money for people with disabilities and the kinds of senior citizens programs where I said the pressure was going up on. And then I was at U.S. Department of Transportation a couple of weeks ago, and they reminded me that you can do whatever you want in Illinois, but ADA paratransit is a civil rights. It's not a transportation issue, and by law, you cannot cut it. So those pressures continue to mount. I also want to close on a positive note today. All is not bad in the state of Denmark, or rotten in the state of Denmark. We are sharpening our pencils at all the service boards and the RTA. The CTA, under President Claypool, the CTA reduced its absenteeism. It developed a modern supply chain system that would impress Walmart on how it repairs its buses. It eliminated slow zones, and it's upgrading its fleet all the time. And they had a magnificent public-private partnership where they bring in $360 million of revenue from the bus shelters that are world-class around our area. Metra, they finally stepped up, and they have a long-term capital plan, and that was a difficult decision because it will have fare increases, but they've addressed their overtime, they've implemented healthcare cost-sharing efficiencies and insurance for their employees, and then PACE, the bus on shoulder. What a magnificent success it is on the Stevenson, and it will expand. They've done call-in ride changes that are magnificently successful, and they're gradually converting their bus fleet for cleaner air to compressed natural gas, but it also lowers their cost. We're doing more with less. And then with respect to the operating cost per passenger, I think this is the bottom line on how's the RTA doing. Folks, you can say what you want about our mass transit system in Chicagoland. We have the lowest operating cost per passenger mile of any major city in America. Let me say that again. We are the least expensive to operate mass transit system in America among major cities. And more importantly, union mechanics, we have them. Believe it or not, in the last few years, we've had fewer breakdowns with the oldest equipment of any of its peer railroads or systems in the United States, the fewest breakdowns per mile, and it's a credit to our mechanics, of any system in America. So we're the cheapest, we're the best maintained with the oldest system, and I think that's pretty good and makes the RTA one of the best systems. Just to close, when we were going through that list of all the people that ever had my job, and Sam Skinner had it, we had some great people. Former RTA Chairman Jim Riley, Mr. McCormick Place, Mr. Everything. Jim Riley always reminds me, tell your audience that the RTA is the only governing body in Illinois that ever went to Springfield on its own and got pension reform for its employees, for its drivers. There's no more spiking, there's no more working for a day and getting yourself on a big payout. Our pension system is the model of solvency of the public pension systems anywhere around. So we have a pretty good track record. Last but not least, the RTA itself. I told you I only have 100 employees with me. Just so you know, we are 0.7% of mass transit's budget. 0.7% is what the RTA's budget is. There's no train wreck going on here, folks. And we are the Solomon that keeps all of the regions getting its fair share. So I have a staff of less than 100 that last year took almost 3 million phone calls, down from 5 million because of technological improvements. And we oversee 580,000 reduced fare and free ride permits in our region. Some of you said, hey, how much does that Blagojevich free ride program really cost the state of Illinois or the RTA? I will tell you that Governor Blagojevich's free ride program, I guess for lack of a better word, cost our region almost $100 million a year. We eat it. Students eat it. People with disabilities eat it. Regular riders eat it. $100 million a year for that type of program. Not all Blagojevich's, but $100 million a year. So I thank you for taking time to listen about mass transit. Sometimes we're forgotten, we're taken for granted. I will tell you, we are an integral part. Where transit goes, economic development grows. So with that, I will, close by saying John Gates, when he asked me to take this job, the reason I really took the job was that I needed one more office, as Julie Cronin and Dan Cronin kidded about last Thursday, to keep all the coffee mugs from those jobs that I've had. So it's time to give me my coffee mug so I can display it in the RTA offices. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. All right. Lost that. Okay. No coffee mug until you answer a few questions.
Okay.
All right. Let's get this straight. And also, we're going to have you put on the blindfold and choose the lucky diner. Okay. Jackie Robinson Ivy, City Club Governor. Senator Dillard, are the cuts you mentioned that Governor Rauner has proposed to make the record, something about 26 million execs. Can you fit that? I'm loving your writing. It's beautiful. Do you know what she's saying here?
Jackie, tell us what your
What is your stand and be Jackie Robinson Ivy, people? Come on, stand up. Let's go. It says, are the you go right ahead.
So, Senator, the question is, the cuts that you mentioned, were those pre the announcement last week of the discovery of the 26 million after the Good Friday, rediscovery of the Good Friday cuts that Governor Rauner mentioned? Were those numbers pre the discovery of the revenue, or?
Yeah, we're not getting any of the 26 million, and the governor's given that money to Human Services, I think mostly, which he should. But we're going to work with the governor. The governor has a brutal job any way we can, and whatever the final outcome budgetarily is in Springfield, the RTA wants to be there. We're sharpening our pencils, but we want to be there as part of the solution. No, those ADA numbers, they're transit, so those remain unchanged, and I'll be in Springfield with a lot of you over the next month or two, or however long it takes to get our money back in some stage.
We've got a plethora of questions. All right, Ashvin Ladd, member of the City Club. Will we ever see a CTA train line that connects the blue and the brown lines on the northwest side of the city of Chicago?
I'm not sure I'll be the chairman if that ever happens. I can't stress enough, we have a $36 billion backlog of capital and infrastructure needs. It's an amazing number. We're building it back up more than $1 billion a year, but a $30 billion backlog just to take care of what we have today. And Ash and I always see legislators who always want us to extend out, do this. We don't have enough money to take care of what we have today. So it would be great in theory, but I don't know where the money comes from.
Steve Schlickman, predecessor of Leanne Redden. Steve Schlickman from UIC. Stand and be right there. Hi, Steve. All right. Former executive director of the RTA. What are the chances for a state capital bill that will fund both renewing the system, as you described, and building more transit service?
I don't know. I'm not in the legislature anymore, but I hope they're good. There are a lot of interest other than mass transit that want to do construction. We need an infrastructure bill, and it's going to be a tough job for Governor Rauner to explain the difference between getting your operating budget under control and having to have new revenues to pay off bonds to have an infrastructure program. But I'm going to be there with the road builders and everybody else that has an interest in new funding for infrastructure, and we got to keep up. And again, Steve, it's why I said today, we need to either increase the gas tax, index it for inflation, because we've lost most of its buying power, or a substantial part, or we need to figure out probably how to broaden out the sales tax base, which, as you know, because you've had my job or Leanne's job, is an easy way to go, since we get a lot of our money from sales taxes.
All right. Former Transportation Secretary Tim Martin, a member of the City Club, asks, what is the best thing Springfield can do to help transit? And B, what is the worst thing Springfield can do to transit?
The best thing they can do is find us a stable, long-term, and it holds true for Washington. Just give us a stable source of capital funding. So I don't care what the source is. We only get about half from the federal government of what we need, and the state really didn't even have a program left. But we have $30 billion of backlog, and I got to have a stable funding source of capital. You know, I don't know what the worst thing they could do to us is. You got to have a mass transit system. We've got a good one here. I would like to make it a great one. So I don't know how much bad they can do. You know, if the governor's cuts are sustained, I'm not sure they'll all be sustained to us. We will live with those. There's primarily operations cuts, but we need capital money.
Thank you. Chrissy Mancini of the Metropolitan Planning Council. Chris, there she is. Chairman Dillard, do you support SB 277 to create a value capture district and use a portion of future property tax revenues to pay for CTA red line and purple line modernization, or Union Station modernization, red line extension, et cetera?
I certainly would support value capture. I mean, we're looking at innovative ways to fund things all the time. I mentioned the public-private partnership, all those 2,200 CTA bus stations, which are glass, which have to be repaired within an hour under the contract. That is a successful PPP. Looking at value capture, it's the way to go. It's what other big cities have done. I think it's how they did Denver. They did Philadelphia's Union Station. So anything the Metropolitan Planning Council comes up with is usually a pretty good idea, and I'm all for it.
That's because they get their ideas from Chrissy, man. Okay. John Mick of Baxter and Woodman asks, Kirk, we need transportation fully funded. IDOT has started a listening tour to spur activity and support. Is the RTA system considering similar meetings and activities to inspire action?
We all have hearings, all the service boards and us. We are constantly working with the governor's office and have since day one. We're going to participate in their listening tours, so we will be at a variety of meetings out there. So, you know, we're out there, but you got people like myself or TJ or Don Orsino. We will do groups like this, and we'll be out there telling the story of where transit goes, the economy grows. And we got to take care of the system we have out there, and we'll be telling our riders in different ways also to make sure that they talk to their state legislators and members of Congress. And I will say this: our Congress gets it. Our congressional delegation is superb to a T with respect to mass transit. They get it, and our state lawmakers, I believe, get it as well.
Okay, Jackie DeThorne, a member of the City Club, asks two questions. When will the RTA brands PACE, CTA, and Metra use the same payment and scheduling apps? Okay. Number two, could the new L cars under consideration use quieter technology as they do in Europe and Asia?
It's interesting. I'll go backwards first. I just saw a presentation by the CTA to the actually to the Chicagoland Chamber. So much of their technology and the way new L platforms are coming have quieter technology. I don't want to get into the you learn a lot in this job, the way they weld their rails together. But yes, they will be quieter. There will be no assay. If you ever parked your car under an L station, you know, like many of us have, and you see the acetate drips off of that, that's all going to go away as well. So they're working on that quieter technology. Soon, and Don Orsino's here, but we are going to have, you can use your phone and show one of his conductors your app. So we're going to seamless technology very, very soon with respect to the way you pay your fares. We're all one system. My sister takes the Metra and transfers to the CTA. We want a seamless system, and soon all you're going to need is just to show anybody your conductor or tap your iPhone.
Clint Sabin asks if, a member of the City Club, asks if the partial elimination of the Seniors Ride Free program is one of the reasons that CTA, Metra, and PACE have been able to avoid fare increases the past several years, mostly.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I mean, Metra just had a fare increase. PACE hasn't. I don't know what the future of the CTA is. But the free ride programs are clearly a cost to all of the systems. And I don't want to blame everything on Governor Blagojevich, and some of those systems we might not want to get rid of. But I think it was very clear when Governor Rauner announced some of the proposed cuts to mass transit. I said, look, at least let us take a look at the legislation and figure out if you're going to mandate on us and you're not going to send us the money. Let's maybe eliminate some of these programs. So. We're doing everything we can to avoid fare increases. Metra just did their thing, which was sorely overneeded. We got cars that were delivered under Eisenhower, but you can't give it away on a daily basis. It affects everybody. There's no free ride, no pun intended.
Kirk, we're down to final two topics, and I'm going to merge these two questions because Chris Toft of Advocate Illinois Masonic Hospital and Kirk Hartley, who is a fan of yours from your involvement in the Lamont Station issue some 15, 20 years ago, they are asking related questions, okay? Chris Toft, our transport system is great at getting people in and out of the city, but what about moving them from north and south to the west side? When will mass transit address that? Now, Mr. Hartley asks a related question. When, if ever, will RTA seek to provide the south and southwestern suburbs with equivalent Metra service as is received in the northern and northwestern suburbs, where they have he says, I don't know if this is true, but he claims, there are 3 times to 10 times more trains on weekdays and full weekend service.
And that spaghetti bowl of life. I was born at Advocate Masonic Hospital. So we, for the Southwest Quarter, Mayor Kwasniewski from Lamont, the former mayor's back here, we're working on it. And Dan Lipinski, so you have Mr. Transportation, Congressman Lipinski, and Senate Republican leader Christine Radogno. And we are constantly working on and trying to improve that Southwest Quarter. Freight is an issue, and I mentioned that Metra and Freight are operating today together better than ever. So we're working on it, and again, a lot goes back to history. The Southwest suburbs have grown a lot, but we are working constantly, and I look to Congressman Lipinski to sort of take the lead on that. For another day, have PACE back, but they will tell you they have a $2.3 billion proposed program, which will take a lot of work from the Congress to try to move within the suburbs people better, north and south better, but within the suburbs as we grow out into the suburbs. Although we have more people living downtown Chicago than ever before, out southwest and out west, it is growing as well. And PACE has a proposal out there. It's a few years away, but they need congressional help to figure out how to answer the man's question, to connect all of those suburban dots in a better fashion to get people to and from work.
Kirk, from Mrs. George Johnson, Jane Johnson, a member of the City Club, she said, I'm reading, you have had a great and impressive career. After you're done improving the RTA as chairman, will you do major fundraising by trying to bring awareness through blood drives, such as holding a one-day regional blood drive in all train stations of the region? Quote, has this ever been done to save lives? Question mark, end quote. You like that idea?
I do. It's a great idea. In fact, Leanne Redden, and wave your hand. will you get together with Leanne? It is something that we will explore all the time. It's public transit, and we ought to send messages to, to better the public. So it's a great suggestion, and we will certainly take a look at that. And Elizabeth Lively's here from the hospitals. They can help us as well. So I want to thank you, Chris. Everybody this summer, this is my goal for you. If you don't take us, make sure, I'm a baseball fan, take mass transit to see the improved Chicago Cubs, or hopefully the improving Chicago White Sox on the south side. Take mass transit to a baseball game, take your children and grandchildren, go to Wrigley Field, go to the south side, use mass transit. It's a good way to start. Thank you.